Hello, neighbor. My name is Robert J. Ray. I'm a professional counseling therapist and trainer of trainers. I worked in a mental health prison for 11 years. I have fixed a lot of broken men and women in my 45 years as a counseling therapist. I was born in Maria, Mississippi and graduated from the famous T.J. Harris High School in 1963. T.J. Harris played Brinkley and Jim Hill in football and basketball every year before that stumbling block of integration dissembled the black race. I ran for mayor of Meridian in 2021. I ran for governor of Mississippi in 2019. I'm Robert J. Ray, the man with all of the answers, every Monday at 4 p.m. Watch me on WeBelieve.global. Hello, neighbor. Welcome. Welcome to the Robert J. Ray Show, the man with all of the answers. Today, this is going to be my crowning book that I'm going to read. It's called The Nigger's Holy Bible. I wrote this book, and this is going to be what's going to put me down in history. And this book is going to, I wrote it for specifically for the black American race, to try to get them out of that white Holy Bible Christianity stuff that has been victimizing them ever since they got out of slavery. But the main thing people always ask me is, Mr. Ray, why you name the book The Nigger's Holy Bible? Well, I'm going to share with you, and then you can make up your own decision about it. When the African was first brought over here from Africa, they were a race of people. They were the African race of people. Even though they came in chains, they were still human beings. They were African that they had been kidnapped. That's all it was, African people who had been kidnapped and brought over here. But as soon as they brought them over here, they started changing their names so that they wouldn't have a conscience about kidnapping another race of people. So they started calling them darkies. They started calling them jungle bunnies. They started calling them tar babies. And then even in the 40s, they were still calling them pickaninnies. The reason I know they call them pickaninnies is because it was this movie. I like to watch a lot of movies in the 40s. And there was a black lady on this train, and she was pregnant, and she had the baby on this train. And they asked one of the white guys, say, well, how is she? Everything is all right? And he said, oh, yeah, the little pickaninny is doing real well. And that kind of shocked me. I said, the little pickaninny? I said, he talking about the baby. And see, and I was born in the 40s, and I'm just thinking, I said, why did they call me a little pickaninny? Yeah, I know they was, they had some racism about it, but I didn't know they called them pickaninnies back in there, little black babies pickaninnies. But then they start calling you Negroes. You remember those? That was during the time of Martin Luther King and stuff. And then they called them colored people. It was called colored people. Because that's when they had their water fountains for colored and the water fountains for white, and the waiting rooms at the bus stations, Trailway and Greyhound, the colored waiting areas, and the white waiting areas. So we was called that. And now we was also called, now they call the people of color. And they call, that's what black people label themselves today, is people of color and black. That's what most people say. And then plus they ask you what your ethnicity is when you fill out an application, and on there it has black. So now we are black also. So you see all of the labels that we've had since we came over here. Anything to get you away from being a human being, an American, like the rest of the people. They was calling it. So the reason I use the word nigger as the Holy Bible, the English Holy Bible, is because that is the only label that stick with the black race. Ever since they started calling them nigger when they first came over here, all of these other labels, they disappear. You can finally, you never hear anybody use Negro anymore, and colored people, you don't hear them use that anymore. And pickaninny, and then, they did use coons. They call us coons also. But the only one that always stuck with you, and it's with us right today, you can probably turn the radio on, and you can hear a rapper singing nigga this and nigga that. And so I'm writing this book for the millennials and the Generation X's, because the baby boomers, their mind is already in the vice of the white Holy Bible Christianity. You can't get them away from it. If you talk to them about, say, hey, have you ever looked into the white, they'll say, oh, it was good enough for my mama and my grandmama and all of them. But your grandmamas and your mamas, they wasn't too bright. They couldn't understand what was happening to them. They didn't know that they was being deluded and being pulled into a religion that really was false all the way down the line. I remember reading this book called How to Make a Negro Christian. And it was by a reverend called Colcock Jones, the Reverend Dr. Colcock Jones. And the reason that he wanted to make Negroes a Christian is not to get them connected to God and get them in contact with God, because he owned 3 plantations. And he was talking to some of his other plantation people, and he was saying, what's to stop all these niggas from coming up in my house one night and splitting and cutting me and my wife and my family's throat? And nobody will never know who did it. So what he decided to do was to make them Christian, make the slaves Christians. And if you watch that Nat Turner movie, that's what all of that was about. So he started to pick out certain ones that he knew that he could trust, he thought, and he would teach them how to read, and then he would teach the Negroes how to be Christians. He would teach them also in there that the main thing he wanted to teach them was that they should be obedient to their masters. And anything that made them feel like they was in the right position of being a slave is what he was trying to teach the slaves then. And if you ever get a chance, read the book. It's called How to Make a Negro a Christian. That'll give you a lot of enlightenment. Now, my book brings you right out of the darkness into the light. It's it makes you more aware of why you are into this Christian religion, how you got caught up in it, and how you can get out of it. And that's the main thing, is to get out of it. Because if you remain into that white Holy Bible religion, chances are you won't see heaven, and like it doesn't make you happy here in this world. I remember my mentor Ron, when I was becoming a counselor and trainer, and I had told him, I said, now what if I'm up there trying to do my session and one of these rednecks from down in Mississippi called me a nigger? What I was supposed to do? And he started to chuckle, and he and Ron didn't laugh a lot, because he said it wasn't really much to laugh about in the world the way it was then. And he was right, but he got tickled. And I was, I said, why are you tickling and giggling and stuff like that? But then it came to me that I was doing the same thing they doing. I labeled them. I labeled the white. I said the redneck. Yeah, and that's what they call white people down in the South. They're supposed to be ignorant and dumb and stuff like that. And so there I was labeling them. So what's the difference in them labeling me? That taught me a good lesson then, not to label any white people. I only call white people white Americans, white man, white female, white male. I don't use any regular like hunky, cracker, and things like that. I force myself, and and I've trained myself not to use those words for white people, because I know it probably get them into their feelings, just like the word nigger get the black race into their feelings. So what I'm gonna do, since it's so offensive, the word nigger is so offensive to a lot of people, and I have gotten pies in my face. I've been to places and went in to put in an application, and the secretary had to say, "Hey, we don't hire niggers here." And I was, in my teenage, 16 years, I was already fragile, boy, and that really hurts you. You leave out of there, with you really feeling sad and dejected, and is this the way it's going to be all throughout America, and wherever you go, is it going to be like that? And I can understand black people who've been victimized by this word, the word nigger. But I kind of wrote it so that way down the line, 25, 30, 40, 50 years into the future, when the millennials and the Generation X's have their children, and they've found out that the white Holy Bible religion was just a farce, and that it wasn't true, then they can have something to choose. They can get into the nigger's Holy Bible and really free themselves and enlighten themselves. So that's what I was counting on. But more white people have bought my book than black people. And a lot of black people bought it, but a lot of white people bought it. I guess they just wanted to see what was I saying about the white Christian religion. And they did, and I got some feedback, and they said, "Oh, that's not true. We not like that." And I'll be trying to tell them. I say, how would you feel if you was enslaved by a race of people, and they call themselves, they had a holy book that they believed in, and they believe in loving the neighbor, and they talked all of that, loving the neighbor, and God talked to you, but they would go out on a Saturday, like you Christians did, and you would hang a black man up, and you would burn him, and do all of these dastardly things to the individual, and then you would go up to the church on Sunday and thank Jesus how blessed you are. I mean, do you think he was okay with that lynching and with that burning up another human being? But y'all seem to think that that's okay. And the way that Bible is, the way that y'all's religion is written, the Bible isn't written that way, but the way that y'all's religion is written, the doctrine of it, is that, yeah, you can do that. You can lynch a black man and still get to heaven. It doesn't matter, because all you have to have, this white Holy Bible religion said, is faith that Jesus died on the cross for your sins, and then you will get to heaven when you die. Even though you commit murder, you despising your neighbor in comparison to yourself. Yeah, I used to hear Billy Graham and Jerry Falwell and them, and now Joel Osteen. They preach that same doctrine right down the line. But if you ever ask them about the Ten Commandments, Billy Graham, he never did say anything about the Ten Commandments. Only thing Billy Graham would say about the Ten Commandments is that we can't do those commandments. You can't do it. But the cross, of the cross. Be attentive to the cross. And I would be looking at the people out in the audience, and they would just be so mesmerized. They didn't know whether to go along with it. and he was so articulate, because if you listen to Billy Graham, you would almost be sold on Christianity the way they had it. And he would just be, it's all in the cross. We're going to do evil things and false things, but long as you believe on that Jesus was sacrificed on the cross, then when you die, you'll be okay. You'll be accepted into heaven. But that's not true. Even though he preached that for 50, 60 years, maybe 70 years, it's false. It's not true. You have to be able to live those commandments like angels do in order to be where angels are. So that's what you need. That's what you need to be concentrating on. But since so many black people have been indoctrinated into the white Holy Bible Christian religion, you can't hardly get them out of there. But I see that a lot of the millennials and a lot of the Generation X's, they're not buying into too much of that anymore. They ever hardly talk about that. If you would like a book or a counseling session, go to theorganismchapter4.com. All of my books are available on Amazon Books. We will be right back after this message, and we're going to get into the Nigger's Holy Bible. The black American race is the only race in the USA who do not have connate rational minds to pass down to their offspring, which means the black baby boys being born today will not have their precious gem to compete with all the other races for their piece of the American dream. Why is it that other races can enter the USA with little or nothing and in a few years have more than the black race? The reason: no rational mind. You have to have a rational mind to operate a business and make it pay. The Black and White Race Rationale by Robert J. Ray. Available on Amazon. Get your copy today. Welcome back, neighbor. We're going to get into the, for the sensitive people, I'm not going to use the word nigger. I'm going to change to Negroes. That's you can people can accept that more, and I want you to get things. I don't want you to be dwelling. They said nigga again. They said it again, because it is all the way through the book, because this is the Nigger's Holy Bible. But I'm going to use Negroes where the N word would be, and when I speak of the Nigger's Holy Bible, I'm going to say the NHB. And you'll know it, and that way it won't be on them. That way you can listen to the good things that I'm going to be sharing with you in there. First, I'm going to read some of the introduction to you. This is what: if some things in the NHB seems hard for you to understand, don't get scared or anxious, because this is the Lord Jesus Christ's new church coming down from heaven in a cloud. Sometimes the cloud may appear dark to your eyes, but keep reading, and the dark cloud will be dispersed. Then you will see the sun shining through the genuine truths, bringing joy to your spirit and understanding. I realize that many of you Negroes will find the writings hard to comprehend because of the brainwashing Christians who have made your mind lazy with fairy tales of an easy way to salvation in heaven called faith only. They say you only have to believe and have faith that Jesus died on the cross, like Billy Graham says, for your sins. If this was all it takes to get into heaven, then why does he insist on all in his church to do his commandment? Because he says it plainly: those who love me are the ones who do my commandments. I know you read that in there. You've heard it. And maybe a lot of ministers have said it, but then they just go over it like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about paying any attention to that. But this is the main part of the Christian religion, is the 10 Commandments. He said, do not fool or be deluded yourself into thinking it's easy to get into heaven. It will be the hardest thing you will ever have to do. When you read the NHB, be your own authority. Don't let Negroes tell you that the white Holy Bible is the only way to Jesus. Don't let them persuade you to turn your back on the greatest gift Jesus has given us in the world today. I will share this genuine truth with you Negroes. The white Holy Bible Christian Church kept you Negroes in slavery for 364 years, 132,860 days, 3,188,640 hours. That's how long the white Holy Bible people kept you in slavery? How much longer do you want your mind to be in slavery? You have to ask yourself that question. Now, and they did that in slavery, and then after you was free from slavery, these same white Holy Bible people, they wouldn't let you learn how to read. You know, you couldn't go to school. And then if you went to school, they gave you last year's books that didn't even amount to nothing. So this is what I'm saying is that how could these people who had the same Holy Bible and same Bible you grew up and listened to the same message that the preacher teach up there, how could they love you and how could you embrace the same religion that they had? And look at all the people that they lynched, and not one of them, not one Holy Bible Christian, white Christian, has ever been charged with a lynching of a black man, or a black woman, or a black kid anywhere in America. Now, okay, let's get some more into the NHB. The first question you Negroes will want to ask is, why do we need an NHB? The answer is because all of y'all don't understand the white Holy Bible, and most of all of y'all don't live by what it teaches. Such as Jesus said, if you love me, do my commandments. You don't do them. Since when I was a kid, I didn't see anybody doing the Lord's commandments then. And I lived out in the country, and they had the Baptist church out there, and all of the deacons and all of the females out there, and they would gossip and talk about each other. And the deacons, they would try to go with each other's wives, and they would be drinking, getting drunk, and all of that. And I would be watching that, and I would say, what has that got to do with religion and church and God and stuff like that? And I knew that there was something more to that church than what I was seeing. So let's read on. If y'all don't follow his teaching, it will not have any effect on your life. If you don't follow your doctrine, if you don't live your religion, then it's not going to have any effect on you. You will find yourself going through the motions of religion. The ceremonies, dressing up, going to church on Sunday, listening to the preacher, going out to dinner after preaching, stuffing yourself. But if you were to ask, what did you learn from the preaching and how it will add to your life and make it more, you probably wouldn't have a true answer. Yeah, because I've heard people come from church and, oh, didn't Reverend JoJo preaches? Yes, child, he really preached. And I would say, well, what was it? What did he say? What was? And they couldn't say what he preached about. Nothing. I said, well, how are you gonna learn? Yeah, don't even mess with it. And then they'll tell you that you don't need to worry about understanding what the preacher preached about. Just have faith that Jesus Christ died on the cross for your sins. What does this truly mean to you Negroes? You don't have a clue, do you? And some of you educated Negroes will explain that Jesus was crucified on the cross and he took all of your past, present, and future sins on himself. So now you can die if you have faith in this doctrine. If you're walking around in this world breaking the civil laws, the moral laws, and the spiritual laws, and ignoring the 10 Commandments, but believe you are not going to be charged with any of these things and held accountable for them because you simply confess this Christianity faith, then you would have to be labeled as foolish. You really would be. Because if you have to be accountable for the things that you do in this world, if you break those commandments, and most of these commandments are the same as the civil laws. Don't steal, don't kill, Don't spit venom on people's names, stuff like that. Yeah, if you spit venom on a person's name, he can sue you. He can say, hey, he lied on me, and I'm suing him for defamation of character, for slander, libel. You can be sued, and you might lose your family home. You might lose your car and stuff. It's consequences, right? Sure, there's consequences in what you do in this world. So, but now the White Holy Bible people are telling us there's no consequences in sinning. You know, you can break all of the 10 Commandments, and there's not going to be any consequences. All you say, oh, I confess my sins, and I believe Jesus died on the cross for my sins, and let me in. That's what it's saying. And I would hear a lot of people say that if a person had behaved that broke all the commandments during his lifetime, whoremongering, drinking and drugging and lying and stealing and committing adultery on his wife and mistreating his family and just a straight out demon. And you would say, well, what about, when he gets ready to die? Well, if he confesses sin, if Reverend JoJo go up there and listen to his confession and he accepts God and confesses his sins, and then he die, he'll go to heaven. Now, do you believe that, neighbor? I mean, can you really believe that? Here, because now that he's got cancer and he's dying, now he want to get on the bandwagon now, because he want to have his cake and eat it too. He want to be done did everything under the sun over in this world, and then still have all of the joys and happiness that Jesus have for those who stay the course, who does what his commandments and love him to do. So since he's on his deathbed now, and a lot of Christians say, well, it's a good thing he confessed his sins and he accepted Jesus Christ at the end. People, it's not going to happen that way. You can't change. That'll be just like if he done that and he confessed that and he was going back over say if he went back over in Africa and he woke back up over there for some reason, do you think he's not going to be the same individual he was before he died? He's going to love the same thing. You just can't flip a switch and turn yourself into an angel. That's not going to work. And it's not going to happen that way. And if you die with all of your filthy lust and your filthy loves, then that's how you're going to wake up on the other side. You're going to wake up with these same filthy lusts and still sins that you was doing over here. You're going to want to do those same thing once you wake up over there. That's the reason it's that saying in the Bible that a tree falleth, life, wherever it falleth, that's where it lieth. Yeah, if you die and you into all of this stealing and whoremongering and breaking all of the commandments, when you wake up on the other side, you're going to still have a desire to do those things. You just can't be changed. I think you read in the Holy Bible that you can't change a goat into a sheep. Haven't y'all heard that, neighbor? Yeah. And that's what you would be doing. It would be just like a magician. I'm going to turn this goat into a sheep. But it doesn't work that way, people. When you die, you have to have gone through the narrow gate that's talked about. I know you've talked about it and heard about it. And you have to go through the narrow gate. But if you've been going through the wide gate, where everything and anything is okay, then when you die, then when you wake up on the other side, you're going to be going to the wide gate. You're not going to say, well, I'm going to settle down and go through the narrow gate. Now, it doesn't work like that, people. And that's why I wrote this, the NHB, is to get people away from that before they lose their soul completely. Because if you do go over there with all of that white Holy Bible teaching with Billy Graham and T.D. Jakes and now Joel Osteen, and he's so articulate and he tells such stories and the people just be mesmerized by it. But his whole doctrine is wrong. You're not going to get to heaven listening to Joel Osteen. It's not going to be that way. I would listen to what Emanuel Swedenborg said, because he's got more smarts, more knowledge, more brains, and he's been chosen by the infinite man Jesus himself to give these knowledges to us. And this is what we have to do. We have to follow the real, true teachings that's out now that the infinite man Jesus has for us, so that we won't be in a dilemma when we get ready to choose how we're going to live our life in this world and in the next world. If you would like to book a session, counseling session with me, go to theorganismchapter4.com. All of my books are available on Amazon Books. We'll be right back after this break, and we'll get into more of the NHB. Y'all niggas was born into a faith-only religion. Baptist, Methodist, Holiness, or Catholic. But y'all have one thing in common, believing that faith only will save you. Y'all were taught to believe that Jesus died on the cross for your sins, and y'all bought into it without questioning whether it was genuinely true or not. Just because your parents introduced you into it, but don't blame them so much as the false preachers who preach this false Nicene Council 325 AD doctrine. The Nigger's Holy Bible by Robert J. Ray, available on Amazon. Get your copy today. All right, I'm gonna talk just about what he said, because how do we get into this doctrine we have today that the white Holy Bible people get? And they don't even know how they got into it. But their mamas was in it, their granddad was in it, and their great-granddad, and they just put it on down the line. And since it worked for them, especially for the white race, we could do anything we want to the black people, and we can do anything we want, and we'll still be able to get to heaven. Oh, I like that religion. Sure you do, and that's why you bought into it. But let me tell you where it came from. The white people who believe and have faith in this Council of Nicene doctrine want you to believe this because of all the sins they committed against the Native Americans and the Africans. If this white Holy Bible doctrine is a true doctrine, then that would mean that Jesus was okay with the way the white people had treated Negroes in America. Yeah, if that doctrine is a true, good and true doctrine, then Jesus is okay about lynching black people. Oh, okay with it. Yeah, you still get into heaven. Just go ahead on. Just believe I sacrificed myself for you. If that was the case, all the heinous crimes they committed against Negroes, raping the Negroes, females, selling the Negroes, children, lynching the Negro males, of course you would want to worship a God and embrace a doctrine that teaches, don't worry about all that horrible sins you white people committed and continue to commit against Negroes. Just have faith that Jesus Christ died on the cross for all of that sinning, and y'all will still get into heaven after you die. Yeah, of course you would accept that. The only thing wrong with it ain't true. That's why Swedenborg said that when the Christians, when they get to the spiritual world, they swell the hells. Can you get to that? He says the hells are swole by Christians. That's really sad, ain't it? It's scary and it's sad. This is why the Negro's Holy Bible is needed to bring Negroes out of the thick, dense darkness they have been in since slavery. When the Negroes were freed from that great institution of slavery, their minds were blank. They didn't have any of the knowledge it took to be successful in America. They really did. Because you have to know how to read, you have to know how to count, you have to know how to choose, have the opportunity come along, you have to know how to take advantage of it. It was a sure bet that these Negroes would be forced into the white Holy Bible. This assured that these freed Negroes would start their freedom in a false doctrine. I know many will wonder, what in the hell is this person talking about? Well, I will explain how this white Holy Bible doctrine was invented out of thin air. Now, if you're told how something started, and you can prove that this is the way it started, then you will have to take a second look at that, wouldn't you? You would have to say, well, that ain't the way it was. That ain't the way it's supposed to be. This is what happened. There was a Christian church that existed before 325 A.D., and it was called the Apostolic Church. These were true Christians who called each other brothers and sisters. That church did not acknowledge three divine persons, and that it acknowledged a Son of God born in time, but not of a Son of God from eternity. Now let me explain to you Negroes what this means before y'all become confused. This Son of God, the Apostolic Church worship, was Jesus Christ. Can you understand that? That's who they worship before this Council of Nicaea. And he was born in time to a Jew female virgin named Mary. Y'all have heard that story because it comes on every Christmas, and it tells the story. This Jewish girl, her and her future husband Joseph, who the angels told, say, yeah, you can go ahead and marry Joseph, but the holy thing that's born in you, that come from the infinite man, Jehovah. You remember that? Okay, let me go on. Listen to what I just said. Jesus was born in time to a Jewish woman named Mary. He grew up just like every other boy, except he learned knowledge very quickly because his father was the invisible God, Jehovah. So you can imagine how he stood out from all the other boys his age. Yeah, just think, if your daddy was rational and a genius and was the most intelligent individual that you could be, then sure his son is going to probably learn quicker than the other kids around him. And don't even think about if your father was the divine infinite man who know all knowledge. You can imagine how quickly Jesus was picking up on things and know it. So this is what went on. He said at the age of 12, he went to Jerusalem and into the temple where all the wise Jews gathered, the lawyers, the doctors, the politicians, holy men. And they were astonished that he was surprised and amazed at what he said to them. This is a 12-year-old Jesus, what he said to them. Jesus, the 12-year-old boy, was already a rational-minded and knew more about the Jewish religion than all those learned Jews. See, he was a rational man. Most black men don't become rational in their lifetime. And a lot of the whites, they become rational when they become adults because their daddy was rational and they watched him and they learned from their daddy and their granddaddy. And when they become 22, an adult, they started behaving rational and they started thinking rational. And that's the way it is. That comes from your DNA. But the black race, they didn't have any rational DNA inside them when they were freed from slaves. They couldn't read or write. They couldn't count. In order to become rational, you have to develop your mind. You have to move on up into a high degree of your mind. I think I've shared that with you a few times. You have to move up into the high degrees of your mind. And black men, they didn't have any place to move up to. So they spent most of their time down at the bottom of their mind. But this man, the teenager Jesus, you can imagine all of the things he went through. You know, if you try to be a good person, a good teenager in the ghetto, now you would be ridiculed. You would be bullied. And just think, here's a Jewish boy who's not going to do any sinning, any lying, ain't going to be out there hanging out with the other little Jews. And that was in Nazareth, where they said, didn't anything good come from Nazareth? But he was straight as an arrow, doing his Father's work, becoming God is who he was becoming. So he didn't lie, steal. He was not trying to have any sex with the little female Jewish whores around there. And he stood out like a sore stump. So you can imagine all of the slings and arrows that was thrown at Jesus coming up to temptation. You couldn't even imagine. You couldn't stand it. But he was able to accept all of that and still didn't do any sinning. So let me read on. Say, remember this, because this is very important to bring you out of the popular delusion you may already be in the White Holy Bible doctrine. Y'all Negroes would never understand the temptation Jesus went through during his teenage years, and he did not yield to any of them. Try to open up your mind to view a picture of Jesus, the teenager in Nazareth, a city that had a reputation nothing good came from it. Does this remind you of any Negroes living in New York, Chicago, Baltimore, Dallas, LA ghettos, the big city housing projects? For these Negroes, the temptations are too strong and they fall victim. You're around all of this temptation, the drinking, the smoking, the sex, the stealing, the selling the drugs and all of this stuff to get material things. If you are in that and you're trying to be a good teenager and go to school and obey your parents and mother and get an education, it's too much. The temptation is too strong for you there. And they fall victim. The teenage Jesus didn't lie, steal, cheat, or try to have sex with any Jewish teenager, not hanging out with any of the Jews, getting drunk and into trouble, respecting adults and practicing his religion. Can you imagine the bullying and the ridiculing that went on? And the hatred of the teenage Jesus had to go through. But he didn't sin, not one time. Don't you Negroes think it would take a God to resist all of the temptation in this world? Ask yourself that question. You would have to be a God to resist all of the temptation in this world, wouldn't you? And that's who Jesus was. He was becoming the God, the visible God who would be walking among us. And he was the one that became God. At the age of 33, this God, Jesus, began to establish his Christian church, and these fresh Christians was taught from Jesus himself that he was God. He taught them that. The disciples that he chose, he told them that he was God. He was teaching them that. And then Philip, like so many people don't understand, you can be telling them all of the time, and then he had the nerve to tell Jesus, say, show us the Father. And Jesus looked at him and said, Philip, have you been with me so long and you not know who the Father is? You know, the Father's in me and I'm in the Father. But Philip couldn't understand all of that, and like a lot of other disciples. He was trying to tell them that, hey, I am the visible God. My Father was the invisible God Jehovah. But now, I have came into the world. He sent me into the world. They wouldn't have understood it if he just said, look, I sent myself into the world. But he did do that. That's what he did. He came into the world the same way that all the rest of us come, through the womb for 9 months and then born to a female, and they get their body from the female. That's why a lot of people didn't know. They say, well, Jesus, he wasn't Jesus was a Jew when he was in the world because he was born from a Jewish mother. So he had to be a Jew. But his father was the divine infinite man, and that's who he would become sooner or later. In the same way we would. We might be born, get our body from our mother, but if you was a Jones and your daddy was a Jones, pretty soon you'll be picking up all of the traits and DNA habits that the Joneses have. And you would become a Jones in the long run, and you would be another Jones. That's what it is. But since Jesus, his father was only the infinite man, Jehovah, the one that created everything, and then came into the world to be with us and establish a new church because the Jews had killed the church that they had been given by Moses. And this is what took place back in those days. But the Nicene Council, that's when they changed the whole thing all the way around. And I'm going to share that in a few minutes. Take a deep breath and exhale because this can be confusing. It will make it simple for you Negroes. One of Jesus' disciples, Jesus, he told his disciples that when they look at him, they're looking at the Father. Let's go over this again because you need to be 100% clear on this statement Jesus made to the disciples. When you see me, you're looking at God himself. See, a lot of people right now don't think that Jesus was God. They don't think it. If you would like to book a counseling session, go to the organismchapter4.com. All my books are available on Amazon.com. We will be right back. Senator James Oliver Eastland, he headed up the U.S. Judiciary Department for many years, the highest judiciary committee of the United States of America. He was my guidance, my superior, protector, and mentor. He did show me how the slick communist Jews was coming into Mississippi and corrupting our blacks who were only a few generations past being ignorant slaves. Slaves whom had been long supported with home, food, and upkeep until a war released them from so-called slavery into poverty, homelessness, and without assistance. We grew up together. Killer Killing by Larry Ellis. Available on Amazon. Get your copy today. Hello, neighbor. Welcome back. Time is just flying by, and that's the way it is when you indulging in something that's as wonderful as these is. I'm going to read some more. You see, the people of the Apostolic Church believed and had faith that Jesus was who he said he was, the invisible God who became visible. For 300 years after the death of Jesus, the people of the Apostolic Church still in its infancy knew that there was only one God, and that God was Jesus Christ. And the people were happy with this knowledge that Jesus was their God and they were at peace inside their souls and minds. This is what you Negroes will experience when you begin to read and embrace the NHB. Yes. You had that peace. You begin to understand the genuine truth about God, heaven, life after death, and the things. But like anything else that's good and true in this world, someone will try to dissemble it. This is what happened to the Apostolic Church in the year 325 AD by an intellectual whore named Arius. Arius, this idiot, decided to come up with his own religion, which his main false issue was that Jesus, human, was not divine. This was his thing. Jesus, human, is not divine. Although he had raised himself from the dead and he had ascended into heaven, and as Arius, he came up with this big lie. The disciples and many other people, it said that Jesus raised himself from the dead, was seen by his disciples and many other people after he spoke to them and then he ascended in heaven. Y'all probably have watched the story about Jesus, and when they crucified him on the cross, and then they said he was dead, and they got him down. They went and put him in the tomb, and the next morning, Mary, the prostitute that he had converted, she came down to the tomb, and then she seen that the door was open and Jesus was gone, and then she saw somebody walking up there, and she ran up there and she said, "Oh, Master, where is they taking my Lord and waited?" And then she found out that was Jesus right there. So she was the first one to really run and tell that Jesus had arisen. Now, anybody that raised themselves from the dead, he would have to be God, wouldn't he? Because only God deal with the death, isn't it? That's what they say. So he raised himself from the dead. So he was divine, but this guy Arius, this is what he was trying to do. He said, if you believe his disciples and the other people who saw Jesus after he raised himself from the dead, I will say that this qualifies Jesus to be the divine human. Wouldn't you? Here's what the true history says about why the white people's Holy Bible doctrine became a false doctrine, Christian doctrine. At first, the Apostolic Church, it was a true doctrine. But this is when it changed. The true Christian doctrine fall began in 325 AD with Constantine the Great, whose empire spread across Asia, Africa, and Egypt, and Europe. Constantine the Great was a Christian and a fanatic about religion. He was a Christian. He loved it. He called together all the bishops from Asia, Africa, Europe to his palace in the city of Nicaea in Bithynia in order to throw Arius' new religion out of his empire. He brought all of them, we're going to get rid of that Arius doctrine, whatever he's saying. He said, this event is known in true history as the Council of Nicaea. You can read about this in history. You can go in the encyclopedia and read about the Council of Nicaea, spelled N-I-C-A. And you should probably do that so you know that this is genuine truth that I'm telling you. You Negroes can read about the Council of Nicaea on the internet. You can, and if you need to see how this Christian doctrine became false. Okay, when Arius and his followers began denying the divinity of Jesus, who was born from the Virgin Mary, the Emperor Constantine the Great called all the heads of the Apostolic Church together in order to convict and condemn Arius' position. So what they did, they said that, for instance, that they decided that if you decide, this is what they did. If the president was to call down all of the heads of the church and say that, hey, since God was part female, we're gonna make him a God part female, and have female, and we'll have him counsel at the head of the Christian church decided from this day forward that will be a female God too. Now this is ludicrous, but if the president of the United States and got all the heads of the Christian church together and decided to do this, in about 50 years, that's what everybody would believe in the Christian church, that there's two gods, a male and a female God. This is what they did with the Council of Nicaea. What they did, they came up with this religion. They said that we'll say that there was a God the Father from eternity, a God the Son from eternity, and a God the Holy Ghost from eternity. That's three gods. And then we'll say that now the bishop did it, accomplished it, and they said that to Jesus himself, just because 1 billion people have faith in the false Council of Nicaea doctrine created out of thin air. And this is what they did. They created these three gods out of thin air. And that's what they believe today in the Christian church. They believe the Father is a God, the Son is a God, and the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit is a God. And they just came up with this out of thin air, and now all of the Christians believe this. Now, Do you really think that you're gonna get into heaven with a false doctrine like this? Even though everybody believe it, even though Joel Osteen and Billy Graham and all of them say it so, it's not gonna be that way. Just think about that for a while. Now, I just want to hit on the young Negroes for this last part of last, because my time is running. This is the young Negroes, and I'm gonna say something about that because I wanted to get this. I may have to come back and do a part 2 if I get good ratings and feedback from this part 1. Frederick Douglass said, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." This was a genuine truth from a man who had been a slave in the 1800s. Even then, he knew that there had to be parents that would raise their offspring in a loving, disciplinary way. Young Negroes today are raised by some two parents who have brought into the white psychiatrist talking about not using corporal punishment on children. Let them be in their freedom and they will come out okay. This is not true, people. You cannot depend on a child to raise themselves. All babies are born evil, with an inclination to choose evil behavior over the good. They did an experiment. I know people going to say, oh, that's not true. Babies are little angels. Listen, they did an experiment. They brought these little kids in a room, little adolescents, and the instructor told them, say, now I got to go out a while, but on this table over here, all of the good toys over here, you can play with those. But all of these toys over here, the evil toys, you can't play with those. Those are evil and bad. Don't play with those. No sooner than she went out of the door, where do you think the kids went to? They went to where all of the evil tables is, the knives and the guns and the play guns and stuff like this, because they have an inclination to do evil, because from the fall of the Adam and Eve thing, they all are born evil. All the babies are born evil. And if you let them try to raise themselves, you'll see that they're going to end up in prison in the long run. It say that if the babies inherit whatever evil and false behavior patterns from their parents. If their parents were adulterers, thieves, liars, fornicators, murderers, and haters, when the offspring will develop these same sins, if he is not watched and corrected, when these evil begin to pop up in him or her. The worst offenders of this sin are the single parents, particularly the young single mothers who don't have the maturity or rationale to build a strong child. Most often, these Negro mothers were raised by single mothers themselves who struggled to raise a family without a male father figure in the home. This was caused by the white Holy Bible politician who passed a law against Negroes beginning in the 60s and 70s that basically said, we will send you a check to take care of your little Negroes, kids, but you are not to have a male father figure stay in the home with you. Big mistake. This guaranteed that there would not be any discipline in the Negro's household because it takes a man in the home to give understanding and discipline to a young Negro male. Females find it impossible to discipline male children, especially when males become teens. The single female parent can't stop her son from becoming a menace to society and ending up in prison. She can't do it. I worked at the prison. Most of 99.9% of the teenage males, black males that came to prison, they was raised by a single mother. It's just the genuine truth is right there. Now, I want to say something. I got just a couple of minutes left. It says that in about a narrow gate, for wide and broad is a gate that lead to destruction, and there are many that go in by it, because narrow is the gate and difficult it is the way that leads to life, and there are few that find it. Listen, if your Negro teens will not go to school and go and behave the way that the society have set it up and the way what the parents tell them to do, then they going through the wide gate. And then soon society going to have to scoop in and discipline them and they'll end up in prison and in jail and stuff like this. Always remember the above statement by the infinite man God, that if you do find yourself entering through the wide and broad gate because of certain circumstances, be sure to ask the infinite man God to go through it with you, and you will be saved. The infinite man is not saying he agree with what you do, the crimes you commit, or the sins you commit, but he will never stop loving you and forgiving you and having mercy on you. All of you welfare queens, baby mamas, hoochie mamas, whores, and prostitutes will be a member of the infinite man's new church, where you find peace in your soul and mind. In the NHB, there will be certain verses from the White Holy Bible which the infinite man will use to enlighten and show you understanding. He will make it simple for all you Negroes to understand and live by daily. That's about as much as I can share with you this time, and I was just getting started. But I think I'm going to have to come back. If you will, and if you want to, I'll come back and do a part 2 because there's so much more I can use for you. That's all I got to share with you this time, and I'm anxious to move on. Hello, neighbor. My name is Robert J. Ray. I'm a professional counseling therapist and trainer of trainers. I worked in a mental health prison for 11 years. I have fixed a lot of broken men and women in my 45 years as a counseling therapist. I was born in Maria, Mississippi, and graduated from the famous T.J. Harris High School in 1963. T.J. Harris played Brinkley and Jim Hill in football and basketball every year before that stumbling block of integration dissembled the black race. I ran for mayor of Meridian in